Hello, my name is Mederic and this is a message from Med. In our last video, Med and I discussed the 25th chapter of 1 Samuel. Samuel has passed away, but David still has not been crowned as king of Israel. Moreover, Saul has resumed his pursuit of David. Will David be able to escape again, or will Saul finally trap him? In the 23rd chapter, the author states that the Ziphites told Saul where David was hiding, and they did so again. Saul again went after David with 3,000 of his best soldiers. David sent spies to confirm that Saul was again pursuing him. When he discovered his position, he went to Saul's encampment. Saul was sleeping with his army surrounding him, so David went with Abishai to where Saul lay. He had a spear stuck to the ground near his head. Abishai said, "God has given your enemy into your hand this day. Now please let me pin him to the earth with one stroke of the spear, and I will not strike him twice." David did not allow him, saying, "Do not destroy him, for who can put out his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless?" David also swore that he would not harm Saul, but instead allowed God to remove him at his time. However, David did take Saul's spear and his jar of water. The text states that God caused everyone at the camp to fall into a deep sleep, and that is why David and Abishai were able to enter the camp without them noticing. When David and Abishai were far off from the camp, David shouted, "Will you not answer Abner? Are you not a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord, the king? For one of the people came in to destroy the king, your lord. You deserve to die, because you have not kept watch over your lord, the Lord's anointed. And now see where the king's spear is and the jar of water that was at his head." Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is this your voice, my son David?" David replied, "Why does my Lord pursue after his servant? For what have I done? May they who told you that I am evil be cursed before the Lord, for they have driven me out this day that I should have no share in the heritage of the Lord, saying, 'Go, serve other gods.'" Saul then said, "I have sinned. Return, my son David." But David responded, "Here is the spear, O king. The Lord rewards every man for his righteousness and his faithfulness. Behold, as your life was precious this day in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he deliver me out of all tribulation." Saul then said, "You will do many things and will succeed in them." And the two again went their separate ways. When Jesus began his ministry, large crowds gathered around him, and he preached a message that became known as the Sermon on the Mount. Although David was not present when Jesus preached this sermon, he practiced many of the principles Jesus talked about. In this sermon, Jesus began with the Beatitudes. David considered himself blessed despite his present condition as a refugee. Throughout his journey, we have seen David's humility, his desire to see justice, and his compassion towards others. Furthermore, although David sought peace with Saul, Saul continued persecuting him. These qualities helped David gain God's favor and protection. Although David was running away from Saul, he continued to be a light toward others. When he fled from Saul, many afflicted people came to him, and we've seen how he has restored them and converted them into a formidable military company. Moreover, he served the other Israelites when they were in need. The inhabitants of Keilah were besieged by the Philistines, and David went to liberate them. David also took care of Nabal's shepherds so that they could do their jobs peacefully. David understood that serving God was more important than literally following laws. One may say that David was entitled to kill Saul in self-defense, especially when Saul launched his spear at him twice. However, David maintained his integrity to God and recognized that Saul was God's anointed despite his flaws. Therefore, David did not resent Saul, and when it seemed like God had given him the opportunity to kill Saul, David chose not to kill him because he understood that God would give him the kingdom at his time. David's trust in God helped him maintain his peace when he found himself in difficult situations. When Saul was pursuing him, he was able to sing psalms stating that God would liberate him from his enemies and fight for him. Finally, David followed the golden rule. He knew that he would one day be king and that others would treat him in the same way that he treated Saul. This lifestyle was not easy. David spent years running from Saul, but those that were with him gave witness of his integrity. He was like the wise man of whom Jesus spoke, who built his house on the rock. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall because it had been founded on the rock. Up to this point, David has maintained his faith in God, and I pray that God helps you build your house on the rock so that when the rains of trials, the floods of obstacles, the winds of difficulties come, you are able to resist and maintain your faith in God and be blameless before others. Thank you. God bless.